Good afternoon and welcome to Bull Market Stock Show. This is your host, Rian Opson, and we're doing actually today the Nasdaq, where I think actually there will be a bit of a sell-off that will go on into the Nasdaq. Although the Nasdaq was reaching all-time highs yesterday, but I think yesterday and the day before, but there is a few things actually that actually literally bothers me. One is the Chinese crackdown that's really is getting hard on the tech companies, especially in China, and it can spill over to the United States. And then we have there's a big investor, which I will share with you. His name is actually Michael Barry, actually. Michael Barry. He's the one that actually predicted the 2008 recession and made quite a lot of money on that. And he is actually on inflation. When you get inflation, that is actually where it actually moves over to the bond market. And when the bond market starts, the bond yield starts to react, then you get a different story on the Nasdaq. And then lastly, we will do my trading account, which I'm still waiting for tomorrow for Jackson Hole, and why I'm actually betting on the dollar. For that, I will just take a short break, and then I'll be back with you with some more information regarding my thoughts on the sell-off of the Nasdaq.
Keep your finger on the market pulse with the News Alerts tool. Stay up to date on the latest sentiment across all the major asset classes. Uncover bullish or bearish signals tied to specific assets that could be developing before major price moves, and track how news sentiment correlated with price in the past. Track the news volume on an asset, its fear index, and get a better feel for its underlying strength. All with News Alerts, your central hub for market information. That's higher trading from MarketsX.
Welcome back to Bull Market Stock Show. This is your host, Rian Opson, and we're doing actually the Nasdaq, where I think there will be actually a sell-off in the Nasdaq. Please don't forget to subscribe for my YouTube page. Please drop your comments, like if you like what I'm saying, and please don't forget to click on the link below so that you can register your account. Fund it with $250, and classes starts on the 4th of September. So let's get started with this whole thing that I actually put together. One, it's a story of Alibaba sinks to record low as the Chinese plans further crackdown. Listen, I don't know what is happening there. The main thing is Alibaba shares is literally tumbling. Jack Ma is totally missing. People don't know where the guy is, and the guy is normally very talkative, but he's gone. But the Chinese is actually having a heavy crackdown on tech companies, and I think literally that will be a spillover when it comes to the US tech shares, which is now obviously at the Nasdaq. But the crackdown in China is really actually hurting companies like Alibaba and also Tencent, which also affects South Africa's Naspers. So that is actually a terrible thing for the Nasdaq. On the other one is this guy. This is actually the big short investor, Michael Barry, predict the inflation spike, excuse me, a year ago, and sounded the alarm multi times in February. Now, this guy is actually stating that he is actually on inflation. Now, the whole thing with inflation is that it can trigger basically the bond market. And when the bond market trigger, and this is actually the effect that you will get. Now, this is actually a chart that I put together. This is now the Nasdaq and the 10-year bonds. Now, the 10-year yield actually starting to rise. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but the 10-year yield is actually starting to rise. It's sitting at 1.3 the last time I checked. That is now on your 10-year note. Now, the story of beginning of this year, I think it was in April, where the 10-year actually, this in green is the 10-year yield, where the 10-year yield was actually moving strongly up. And that was whole thing to do with the inflation. Inflation is getting out of control. People were talking about inflation. In blue is the Nasdaq. And that is what happened to the Nasdaq. It actually went down due to inflation. Now, the story is that if the inflation goes up, bond yields tend to go up because the investors, or I would say your bond vigilantes, are starting to sell off the bonds. Bond prices drop, yields go up. And that means that they're selling off their bonds. So then they put it in somewhere else where they can get a higher return. And that is not good for the Nasdaq, because these tech companies are using enormous amount of debt to go to the moon and do other funny things like Elon Musk and all of them. So this drop here in the Nasdaq was from 137, and then it went to about 12,300 or 12,281. That is quite a massive drop, about over 1,000 points actually. The other thing is, when it comes to also with the Fed story of tomorrow, now that will be actually interesting. Whatever the Fed is doing tomorrow, the market will react heavily. Now, let me explain that. If the Federal Reserve, scenario one, let's put it like that, scenario one, if the Federal Reserve does not taper, that means that the bond market will start to react, because there is a rumor that goes around that the Federal Reserve will delay tapering due to the new variant, because there's still risk to the economy and he will not taper. Now, if we do that, then you will get a reaction from the bond market where the bond yields will start to actually to go up, and that will trigger the dollar to go up, Nasdaq going down, and there's also a possibility that other commodities will go down because of the dollar that will strengthen based on the Federal Reserve that will not taper. That is scenario one. That is a possibility. Scenario two, if you do actually taper, then I think personally this is the safest option. If we do taper, you will get the dollar that will react, possibly that the dollar will go up. You will get the stocks across the board that will actually go down, and then it will just recover because there's still a lot of liquidity into the market. But as things stands now, it looks like the Federal Reserve, it's going to back down due to the new variant that is ripping in the United States. So there's a possibility in both sides that the dollar might go strong, and that's why my trading account is sitting basically in negative territory now. It's still sitting at negative $40, and it's been sitting there for the last 2 days now, because obviously I'm waiting for the news of Jackson Hole. I thought the dollar would have reacted a bit strongly by now, but I see that is not the case because the market is totally uncertain. It's not sure which way it will go. But for the Nasdaq in particular, it doesn't look good at all because of just what I said, that if they do not taper, then you will get a story where the bond market will react, and that will actually put some major pressure on the Nasdaq. If they do taper, then obviously you will get a small retracement. I don't think it will be much, but you will get maybe a small point where the Nasdaq go down, and then it will go up because bond yields will start to go down when the Federal Reserve is starting to taper. Also, the other problem is the timing, obviously, of when they will finish with the taper. That is the other thing. But when it comes to the Nasdaq is in a very dark space, I would say. I hope that Fed chair do taper, because if it doesn't, the bond vigilante is going to be pissed off, and they're going to sell off their bonds, and then we will get the same reaction of what happened beginning of this year. And believe me, I was in the crossfire in the beginning of this year because I was thinking that the bond yields go up, then it's good, and that was not the case. The dollar actually went up, Nasdaq went down, commodities also went down. I hope we will not see the same story of what we experienced in April this year. But as things stands, we have to wait for tomorrow. But the market is starting to speculate that Jerome Powell will back off from the tapering conversation because of the new variant that is actually running around. That is it from my side. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube page, and also drop your comments, your likes, and all of those things. And also, please click on the link below, register your trading account. And then also fund it with $250, and then we will start with the free class on the 4th of April. That's it from my side. See you guys tomorrow at 1 o'clock. No, see you guys later at 8 o'clock. I will have actually a surprise